Noob School. All right, welcome back to Noob School. Today I've got longtime friend, Greenville friend, Andy Kurtz. Andy owns a company in town called Kopis, K-O-P-I-S. Yep. And Kopis is a strong company. They do mostly outsourced custom programming for businesses, mostly around the Southeast?
Yeah, mostly.
Mostly. And besides the contract programming, you also, tell us about the other divisions you have.
So we have a group that does work around the Microsoft Dynamics Power Platform.
Okay.
So Power BI, big data visualization, and then the low-code, no-code solutions they have, and Power Apps and Power Automate.
Okay.
We have a group that also does Microsoft Dynamics ERP solutions for the SMB space. So Microsoft had multiple products, but they've since, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago, they've gone to one centralized cloud-based platform for the SMB side called Business Central.
Okay.
And we have a team that implements Dynamics Business Central for organizations, and we do that all around the country.
All over the country. So it's if you have Microsoft Dynamics, or if you need custom development, custom applications, or what else? What was the third one?
If you need dashboarding and data visualization with Dynamics Power BI.
Got it.
And the one thing I will say on the Dynamics ERP side is we find it to be a platform that's great for fast-growing companies who are probably on a product like Quicken, which was great when they started the business, and they're bumping their head on that ceiling now of Quicken. I say Quicken, QuickBooks. For folks who have outgrown QuickBooks, they've outgrown it, and we have the ability to give them a lateral shift, so they have all the functionality they had, but they've created headroom to try to grow their organization. And so we've worked real hard to put together a way to do that cost effectively for organizations.
Good, okay. And how long have you had the business?
I started Kopis in 1999, so we are coming up on 24 years.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
I say wow too. Yeah. Sometimes it's a good wow.
Well, we're gonna get into how you started it, and also the kind of the important steps along the way to get to this point, because you've got a great business now. And oddly enough, here we are talking about technology. You majored in accounting. I majored in political science. I mean, but you kind of learn stuff along the way.
How in the world did we get in technology?
I don't know
either.
I suppose it's just so darn effective and popular that you kind of have to get into it.
You do, and for me, I was exposed to it in high school, and honestly, I fell in love with the technology side. I actually sometimes ask myself, why did I go into accounting? So there's a story there.
Yeah. Well, so and also real quick, your company now, how many salespeople do you have?
Oh wow, that's a great question, because I should just know that right off the top of my head. I believe we have six.
Okay.
6 salespeople and 1 person who is leading that team.
Gotcha. Great. Okay. All right. So you have a significant company here in Greenville, but let's back up to the beginning and figure out how you ended up here, and also get some flavor along the way for what you learned about selling. Because you had to be a salesperson when you started.
Oh yeah.
And also hiring and interviewing and some of the stuff that our Noob School folks would want to hear about. So I know you started out, I think, in Buffalo?
Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo.
Yep, go Bills.
Go Bills. All right. And
DeMar.
And you is it tomorrow?
No, DeMar, number 3.
Oh, number 3. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Giving a shout out to the
that's
our
good.
guy who had the cardiac
well,
arrest.
How's he doing?
He's apparently doing well.
Good.
Mind blowing.
Good. That's great. So your dad transferred to Tallahassee.
Yep.
And you transferred you moved to Tallahassee, and you moved into a new high school in what, 10th grade?
10th grade is when I went into that.
Okay.
McClay? McClay, yeah.
Yeah.
McClay was it's a great school in Tallahassee. It's a K through 12 college prep school, small.
Yeah.
I think my graduating class was 55 people. That was it.
Yeah.
And so, but that's tough, moving from Buffalo, New York, Tallahassee, Florida, and entering a school with 54 people who have, for the most part, gone to school together at that point now for 9-10 years.
Yeah.
And so it's like I was the new guy who talked funny.
Plus, you needed all new clothes.
I needed very new clothes. I was able to get rid of my hockey stick temporarily.
So what sport did you transition to?
I played. So for me, growing up in Buffalo, there were 4 sports. It was football, baseball, basketball, and hockey.
Okay.
Clearly, hockey was gone. And quite frankly, if you're in Tallahassee now, you can play hockey. But in the Southeast back then, that wasn't an option.
Right.
Maclay didn't have a football program. So football was gone.
Yeah.
I basically was a little bit shell-shocked. And for my 10th grade year, did not play any sports. I was so annoyed by losing hockey and football. And to this day, I'm very disappointed in the fact that Maclay did have a soccer program, and I never gave it a chance. I didn't consider it even an option to try playing soccer. So I ended up playing. I also played tennis. So I ended up playing tennis when I was my junior and senior year. When I was at Maclay, but tennis was the only sport that I played. That was an organized sport.
Well, you're in great shape. You're doing. Is it mostly biking now?
So ironically, I still play ice hockey.
Okay.
So I picked it back up.
Okay.
And I play in a league here in Greenville, and then I road cycle a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean every weekend if I can.
And then when you were in school in Buffalo, was it a private school like that, or was it a big school?
No, it was a small school as well.
Okay.
I went to a parochial school, a Catholic school up in Buffalo. That was a K through 8 school, and I think my graduating class had 24 people graduating from 8th grade.
Okay. Well, I know you're moving up, because I don't know how big Furman was, but it wasn't that big.
It was but the selection of Furman was partially based on the fact that it was size.
Yeah.
I talked to my high school guidance counselor, and my criteria when I was talking and looking at schools, and you have to keep in mind there was no internet to look this stuff up at the time.
Right.
Our only real school option was friends and recommendations from guidance counselors, or U.S. News and World Report had their college book that they put out, right?
Yeah.
So my guidance counselor, I told him my only 2 prerequisites were I circled the Carolinas because it was halfway back to Buffalo, and I said, and I want a small school. And they recommended I look at Furman, at Davidson, and Wofford were the 3 schools that they recommend I look at. Yeah. And I ended up picking Furman.
Did you look at all 3?
I did, but through brochures.
Okay.
Not through coming and visiting.
Yeah. I think Furman.
It was a great choice.
I think you probably would have liked all 3 of them.
I think I would have too.
They're all good schools.
But Furman was a great school, great experience, lifetime friends. That I met there to this day.
It is funny.
It landed me in Greenville.
Well,
which I did not in 1987 when I graduated think that may have been the greatest thing in the world, but.
Thanks to people like you, it's turned out to be a great city.
It's amazing.
And we have some wonderful people here.
We do.
But it is funny when I talk to people that are roughly our age about picking school. It's always something like, "Well, my cousin went there, and she said it was a good place, and so I chose there."
So my guidance counselor recommended those 3 schools, and then my parents found friends who had a kid home. For Christmas, I think it was, or it might have been for summer, actually. I think it was between my junior and senior year when I was making the decision, but who went to Furman. So I went and chit-chatted with that person, and they talked it up so much. I was like, why would I even think about the other ones? I've got a recommendation.
Interesting.
And then the funny part of that, the whole story is I picked Furman. I got in. We were going to Buffalo, New York for a family reunion that summer before I even went to Furman. And we were going through Greenville on 85, and my dad says, "Hey, do you want to go see Furman?" And I said, "No." He's like, "You're kidding me. Why don't you want to see it?" I said, "Because if I don't like it, it's too late."
Too late. Yeah.
So I'll be surprised in August when I show up.
I like that. I like that thinking. That's good. Yep. That's good. So you went to Furman, small, halfway to Buffalo, and you majored in accounting. So tell us about that choice.
Yeah. So originally, when I picked Furman, they had a degree that was a business and computer science course. And so I picked it. That was one of the reasons I went there was that combined degree. And when I got there, the prerequisites that I was taking for that particular major, the computer classes at the time bored me. I was doing a lot of self-teaching on PC. Everything we were learning was mainframe related coding, and it it didn't catch me at all.
What year? What year was that?
That was my freshman year, so in
What
'83.
year? 83.
83.
Okay.
83, 84 time frame.
Okay. So the oh my gosh, so the revolution was already happening, and you had mainframe teachers giving you punch cards.
My roommate and I actually had a PC.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was doing, if you remember back in the time, I was doing, it was Lotus 123 macro development, but also DBase as a language was just starting to come about. And I was learning how to program in DBase, but all on my own.
Yeah.
So I switched, but I mentioned it was a business and a computer degree. I was taking accounting classes. My dad's a CFO, by the way, so I think accounting's a little bit in the blood. But I didn't know anything from him. The accounting classes just clicked. They just made complete and total sense to me. And so when I decided I don't want to do these computer classes, I'm learning more on my own than I am in these classes.
Yeah.
I think that was a little bit of the. I was naive, and I was also a little bit. What's the right word? I had a little too much self-confidence at times, honestly.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit, when we get to some more of the story, I think that self-confidence shines through again a couple of times. But I was like, I can teach myself the computer stuff, but this accounting stuff really is fascinating.
It's interesting. Yeah. So. Well, I can appreciate the frustration you must have had because I was a little ahead of you in school, or I don't know, I graduated when you were starting, but they were still at Citadel. They were still doing punch cards in minis and mainframes, and I mean, I couldn't imagine going to one of those classes when you're actually doing stuff on the computer back in your room.
Yeah, and doing, I mean, everything, including opening it and all these.
Did you?
these
Now,
I didn't give it enough time, and to be honest with you, it probably was a great major.
Yeah.
I just didn't. I wasn't patient enough.
Right. Well, that's all right. That's why you're an entrepreneur, I suppose.
Probably. Once again, there's a theme that does run through a little bit early in my life.
So did you know DBase 3, wasn't that an Ashton Tate product?
It was.
Did you know the story behind Ashton Tate?
I know there's a Greenville connection.
Well, Tate, his name was George Tate, and he was from Greenville, went to Silicon Valley and started DBase, and added to Ashton because some marketing company said it would sound better than Tate software.
That's awesome.
You know, Ashton Tate sounds pretty good.
It does sound good, actually. Yeah. Good marketing.
And then
it was a great product.
His brother or cousin started Baby Superstore. That's pretty successful. Yep. And then two of his nephews worked for DataStream.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Tate and anyway, it's a great story. I wish he would have been able to come back and kind of share that with the group. But anyway, it was a heck of a story for Greenville to have one of the early database companies.
Honestly, I don't think Kopis would be here if it hadn't been for DBase, and then leading to there was a product that allowed you to compile DBase code into an executable called Clipper, which was a very popular language back in the late 80s, early 90s, that I really... I sunk my teeth heavy into that. Okay. And the reality is the dots connect because of all that. So I can probably point back to getting my hands on those first 5 1/4 floppies with DBase.
You had a whole sleeve of them.
Oh, you had you had 10 of them to install.
They don't even know what we're talking about. So this is an important theme for the folks listening is that Andy somehow probably accidentally discovered a real passion for computers and for databases and things like that that led him to eventually start an IT company that would help people with that kind of thing. Before we get to that, I'll just put a pitch in for accounting. You know, Warren Buffett, if you say, Warren Buffett, what is your one piece of advice to people that want to get into business? Do you know what he says?
Guessing it's related to accounting.
He says, learn accounting. He goes, how in the world? He goes, you could be the greatest salesperson in the world, or you can be a wonderful inventor. But if you understand how that's how business works, is numbers.
Makes sense.
Yeah, no balance sheet, income statement, cash flow, all that stuff. So you might not have to major in it, but you better understand it.
Yep, I agree with him. To this day, I love it. Yeah. Don't love public accounting. Right. Right. I don't love the disciplines of tax and audit and those types of things. Right. But I've always said what I love about accounting is the ability to understand the business. Where does it stand, and what needs to change? Right. And fairly quickly just look at a financial statement. In fact, my team sometimes, they just kind of look at me and shocked when I can just look at a financial statement and go, something's wrong.
Something's wrong.
Something's not right here. And then sure enough, we dig into it and
there's a wrong number or something.
Something's wrong. It's just that it doesn't make sense just looking at a one-page financial statement. Like, it's
well, so you got that discipline. You got out of Furman. And what was the graduating class?
I think it was 700.
700, okay.
Somewhere in there. 700 people,
24, 56, 700, that's good progression.
That was a big,
that's not bad.
Pretty good jump.
But you stayed in Greenville and went to work for Price Waterhouse,
Yep.
which at the time was one of the...
Big Eight.
Yeah, Big Eight.
Big Eight at
How
the
many
time.
are left now?
I think it's 4.
4.
I think
What's it
that's
called
right.
now? Price Cooper or something?
I should know that since I'm an alum, but...
Price something.
It might be, Cooper's is definitely in there.
Okay. So there's 4...
PwC, Price Waterhouse Coopers.
4 big...
I think it's 4.
accounting companies left in the country, big ones.
I think.
So you worked for them, and you did, what was your area?
Auditing.
Auditing.
Yeah.
So you would go in, the CFO of a company would turn in their books for the quarter, and you would go in and audit it before they would publish
It was typically
them?
an annual for us. I was working at the time, Price had satellite offices, so Greenville was not a huge office, right? So, and we didn't have a lot of publicly traded companies that we were doing work for. So what we tended to be doing is working on the annual audited financials. Okay. And quite frankly, the story of ending up at Price is so similar to the story of ending up at Furman. Again, no internet.
Yeah.
My knowledge of what my opportunities were in terms of a job were incredibly limited. No real opportunity to research it. Yeah. And one day in September, my senior year, they come into our accounting class and say, after class, go to the job center and sign up for the interviews. So I went and signed up for the interviews. Well, the only companies interviewing were Greenville-based companies. So at the time, I think we had 4 of the Big 8 in Greenville. And then we had Elliot Davis was here. And so I went and signed up for my 5 interviews, got my 5 job offers, picked Price. And ironically, because it was the smallest office. Okay. So going back to that, I kind of just, for some reason, liked that smaller, quite frankly, a little more entrepreneurial. Yeah. But that's why I stayed in Greenville. It was no great decision. It was them walking in and not really realizing that all the opportunities that were out there that I could have done differently.
Yeah. And so where was the office physically located?
It was in downtown in what was the Nations Bank building, turned into the Bank of America building, is now It's Canal. It's not Canal. It's right there at right at the heart of Main Street and where coffee comes in. Okay. And the big tall building.
Yeah, it was Bank of America.
It was Bank of America building. Yeah. And so we were on, I believe, the 9th floor of that building. Yeah. And let me tell you, in 1987, downtown Greenville, that was not a hopping place.
No, right? It is now.
It is now, but I remember lunch options. Well, we could go to Hot Dog King, I think, and Marines.
Yeah, Marines was good, though.
Marines was awesome.
Yeah.
Yep, the chef salad was one of the best.
Yeah, and the Hot Dog King was down where Sobeys is.
Exactly. Yeah. But those were, there weren't very many lunch options in downtown Greenville other than those 2. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Times have changed.
Yes, they have.
Huh. That's a good building.
Yep.
I like that building. So how many years did you work there?
I only worked for 2 years.
And did you learn anything about the businesses you studied?
Oh, I did. And what was interesting is as I was working in the audit side of this business, my brain was thinking through what could computers do. Yeah. And keep in mind, we were doing handwritten auditing work papers. I mean, we literally had big binders where we were handwriting invoice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, check. Yeah. Boom. All of it was completely manual. And so my brain was always twirling on how could this process I'm doing with Price be automated, but also the business stuff that we were looking at. What are the options? Where can computers be used there as well? Yeah. But I learned. I say I learned a lot. I mean, I got to deal with inventory and started to understand the importance of inventory. Started to understand financials better, and reading that, and certainly understood. We were primarily in the accounts payable, accounts receivable, inventory, those types of functions. But It was valuable, but I also learned I didn't like audit.
Yeah.
Which was probably the most valuable thing.
Yeah, but probably a good extension on your education to see behind the curtains at multiple businesses what's going on, how things work. And then sounds like you were thinking about, we could turn these computers loose here and help them figure out where their best customers were or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think I got quite as deep as figuring out how they could improve their business as much as process.
Just process, okay.
Yeah, I was way more process-oriented at the time.
I remember, if you go back and look at the old Steve Jobs videos on YouTube, there's one where they ask him early on, well, with this new Macintosh computer, what do you think businesses will do with it? And he's like, well, we don't know yet.
Yep.
He goes, we're thinking maybe accounting. It was
so
like kind of the first thing he thought of was, because you obviously can hit the button and process the numbers.
Yep. It's so funny.
But, it's come a long way since then.
It is. But it's a great example of put it out there and let people's imagination figure out what they can do with what problems they can solve.
Yeah. Well, this is a little early, but I can't, because of what you just said, I want to talk about it. The new thing, the Chat GPT, I describe it as kind of Google on steroids or Google plus artificial intelligence.
Yeah, that's probably how I describe it.
Tell us what you think about it and how it might apply to your customers. You're doing custom applications for people. How might they use or consider using this for their business?
Specifically around that one technology, I don't have any direct thoughts on that one.
Yeah.
As much as it is absolutely an extension of AI, and it's AI taken to the next level, right? In terms of your ability to communicate with it, and then its ability to put out information and creativity that is a little bit mind-blowing. So, for instance, I'm a really big jam band fan, and somebody fed in apparently a bunch of Fish songs and then said, give me a Fish song, or give me the lyrics to a Fish song about XYZ, or finish, or add lyrics to this Fish song. And it was mind-blowing how good they were. They were actually awesome lyrics, which is a little bit scary, right?
Scary.
So part of it is going to be a challenge, I think, to society of what's machine created versus real people, human created. And in some cases we probably care. In some cases I don't think we do. The larger picture on our business side is about where we can leverage that kind of technology and that kind of AI function and functionality in automation. Right? Such a huge part of what Kopis does, both on our ERP side but also on our app dev side, is how do we automate processes, and how do we make them more reliable, more predictable, more consistent, and not as reliant on people, and specifically not as reliant on Superman to get the job done, right? So how do we make this so that everybody can do it the same way and do it correctly?
Yeah. Well, I think it'll be very interesting, particularly for companies like yours, because I think your customers are going to say, how can we use this to help us do so-and-so? So it'll be hopefully more business.
It will be. I think one of the interesting things that we do that I hope we can leverage some of that technology with is a concept called an innovation lab, which is where it's not really a project where somebody has come in and say, I want you to build something to automate XYZ. It's more, come help us answer a question. Can this technology do this? So it's really kind of prototyping / research with a customer to figure out, is something possible from either a technological standpoint, do we have the technology to do it? Or, yes, it's doable, but is it cost effective to do it? And does it produce the results? So I'm curious to see. That's probably where that's going to start for us, our innovation labs.
Well, for any of the Noob Schoolers who hadn't tried it yet, Chat GPT, Golf Papa Tango, and it's not an app. It's not an app yet. You got to go to the web and go to the URL and look it up. But it's again, it's Google on steroids. So I'd definitely try it. It'd be interesting to see.
Got Google scared from everything I've read.
It ought to.
Yep.
I'm not going to Google. I hadn't gone to Google in a week.
Oh, that's amazing.
I just go right to this thing and type it in, and I get, a more I think it's a fuller answer.
Yeah.
It's a fuller answer to my question versus just a bunch of links.
Yep, that's interesting.
So
yep.
I like it. All right, so this is important. So you're rolling along, doing a good job. You're learning at Price Waterhouse. How did you roll from accounting major, working at a public accounting firm, to entrepreneur, got my own business?
So step one was I got my first opportunity to leave Price, which was literally our first. I was doing an audit. One of the clients said, "Would you like to be our controller?" Mm-hmm. And I was so anxious to get out of audit. I'm pretty sure I didn't ask what the salary was. I think I just said yes.
Yes.
I think I just said yes.
Yeah.
That was an industrial automation company. That company did PLC programming and electrical control system design, heavily doing automation in the textile space, which was, of course, really big back in, this would have been the 89, 90 timeframe. So I went as their controller, and first thing I did, implement computerized accounting system. Mm-hmm. Then they didn't have a job costing system. Couldn't find one, so wrote a job costing system for them. So,
did you write it?
I wrote it.
Wow.
So, relatively rudimentary, but enough that we could get the job costing stuff. That was eye-opening when I got that job costing data in there. I realized this great example of where we're having systems and data and visibility so critical. This company had a lot of large projects that they were doing. Yeah. And they were multi-year projects. Once I got the job costing data in, I realized we're underwater on most of these projects as a company. Wow. And ironically, we were in there doing the audit and didn't know it. Huh. But didn't have the data. Right. So once I got the data backfilled, realized that. So fast forwarding, I went to the owner and shared the concerns, and he wasn't as concerned. But myself and another person in that company said, you know what, I think we could do this too. And didn't have confidence the company was going to survive. Mm-hmm. So myself and that gentleman who was an engineer, he was an electrical engineer, I'm an accountant, we went and started our own company. We each threw in a whopping $500 and started an industrial automation company. Nice. Two people, as you can imagine. He was an engineer, so he was generating revenue, and he was getting a paycheck. There was not a lot of accounting to do. So to eat, I started doing software development contracting for organizations. Okay. So that's actually where the software development as a doing it for hire started coming from. Okay. Is I started finding people who needed software written. I said, I can write that. So I would do that, do the little bit of accounting at night. And I ended up doing that with companies like Floor. Was one of my larger companies. BMW was doing software development at BMW. And ultimately in 99 turned that into Kopis. Right, 99. So what year would you have gone out on your own? What year would that have been? I'm going to say 1990. Okay. Right in there, 89, 90 time frame. And so whopping 23 years old. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I like it. You put your time in corporate America. Oh my gosh, I gave him 2 whole years. Yeah, 2 years. I will never forget the partner when I turned in my notice. He says, "You have not learned. You're making a mistake. Yeah. You should stay and learn on our dime a little bit longer." Mm-hmm. And those words, those burned me for a long time. And I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong. Good. And they did drive me. Yeah. Although he hosted a Price Waterhouse reunion probably 15 years later. Yeah. And the first thing I did was I walked up to him and said, "You were right. I should have learned on your dime a little bit longer." Well, you never know. You never know what the other door would be. You don't know. But so I guess what I'm thinking is when you were making these calls to sell your personal development services early on, were you calling on the CFOs and the accounting people or the CEOs or who? It depended. So, in the larger companies, I certainly wasn't calling on the CEO of Floor or BMW, right? Those were typically referrals that people who knew what I did made a referral of this, which to me has always been a huge part of sales.
Yeah.
It's been make one customer happy, and they're either going to refer you internally or to other people that they know.
Yeah.
And so that warm handshake, that
Right.
warm handoff is
Yeah.
so much easier than,
Right.
than the cold calling.
Right.
Smaller businesses, which I would do software development for and other computer-related services, was definitely calling on both owners of those businesses, kind of in the SMB space, as well as either financial people or the operational level
Right.
people. It was going to be somewhere in there.
So I'll make a guess here that one of the reasons you were successful early on was because you weren't a guy who just majored in computer science. Because if you had, you'd be going to these people talking about computer science, right? And this bits and bytes and whatever. And you went in there talking about, I know you guys are probably seeing these things on your balance sheet. I can help you with this stuff over here to make it go away.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was quite as much like balance sheet or income statement related, but it was very much a trying to understand why are we trying to solve this problem, right? And I've always said, and my team quotes me on this all the time, is there's really only three reasons any organization should ever spend money with us or with anybody. They either should spend money with us because what we're doing is going to help them sell more, generate more revenue. They're going to spend money with us because we're going to help them reduce their costs of delivering on that revenue, or we're going to help them eliminate a risk, which is actually just elimination of a future cost.
Yes, yeah.
Right? So in reality, there's two.
Yeah.
Make me more money,
Save me money.
sell more, less expensive to do it.
Yeah.
Any other reason to spend money by an organization is just because they want to.
Right.
Right? So I think because of the financial and the accounting background, I kind of had my head around, listen, those are really the things that matter.
Yeah.
So let's try to understand why we're doing this
Right.
and not walk in talking zeros and ones, but try to understand why and then hit that bullseye.
But in terms of your, we talked to the Noob Schoolers about having a skill stack. What are the different things that you're pretty good at? And, because you became pretty good at developing, software for businesses, and you became pretty good at understanding numbers and being an accountant, those two things together, I think, really helped you to get to Kopis.
I think so too. They, once again, I always had, for some reason, a capability of walking into an organization, sit down in a room in a business I've never been in before, and they start talking about their problems, and I can real quickly understand the problem and start to see potential ways to solve it.
Right.
So that's I don't think that was learned. I think that just it probably was learned because of the base of knowledge that I'd gained, and then the ability to translate that and how do I do that with the technology we have available? How do we solve this with the technology? And connecting those dots was definitely a skill that was part of my selling process. Right. The reality is my selling process was very much a combination of understanding and then solutioning and creating confidence that we could solve the problem. That somebody who's just more focused on the sales side probably needs to partner up with, in our world now, our salespeople partner up with a solution architect.
Yeah.
So that our salespeople's job is understand the why. Why are they trying to solve this problem? What is the pain that is driving them to be willing to spend money to solve a problem? What are the constraints that we face? Are there budget constraints, people constraints, technology constraints?
Yeah.
Then bring in the solution architect who's the expert who can figure that out. I was able to merge those two things into just me doing them both. But it's not required to be able to successfully sell.
Yeah. What's interesting is back to, we talk about the skill stack. Steve Jobs talks about how he took these classes when he was, let's say attending college for a little while in typography, and all that kind of crazy stuff, and how that kind of turned into the beautiful Apple logo, the simplicity of it, and the font and everything, because you never know when these things are going to come together. So I think it's, I go back and forth. Sometimes you think you should laser focus and just get really good at one thing, and then sometimes you're like, why don't you learn about a number of things and see where that leads?
You can probably do both.
Do both.
I do think there's real value in laser focus
Yeah.
when you have your goal and
Yeah.
your objective and
Yeah.
what you're trying to solve, right? And so, however, having a broad foundation of knowledge about a lot of different things
Yeah.
can help with that laser focus, in
I
my
agree.
opinion.
I agree.
So
I agree. And you don't have to get great at everything. You really should be great.
can't.
Right. You should be great at something and then understand a lot of other things.
Yeah.
probably
So
what
I think
I
a huge part for me is the ability to ultimately have that huge base of knowledge and then figure out when to connect the dots. And there were times in that focus of, well, we're trying to solve this problem. It's like, yeah, you know what? I've heard or read about X, Y, Z. I think now it's time to dig deeper into that. But
Yeah.
just to even know that that was even an option
Yeah.
and to look into, this might be the time for this technology to come
Yeah.
into play, or this technique or this capability.
Okay. Well, that's amazing. I love the story. I love to hear how people go from, let's call it a normal job, to having their own business. And sounded like your first step was just getting out of the big company to a smaller company.
Yep.
And then figuring out.
I definitely made the move from that big corporate, which Big 8 accounting, it was
Yeah.
absolutely big corporate.
Yeah.
Even though I was in a smaller entrepreneurial office, it was still Big 8
Yeah.
accounting, down to what was absolutely a entrepreneurial startup. So I got to watch, for that time I was the controller there, a very entrepreneurial company by a guy who started the company himself. And then, once again, a little bit of impatience. I mentioned earlier, a combination of impatience and then maybe some overconfidence of, I can do this better.
Yeah.
And me and a gentleman just decided to take that plunge.
Yeah.
And then, quite frankly, the software development came from desperation to eat.
Yeah. That's a good motivation.
It was a really good one. My wife thought so too.
Yeah.
No kids at the time, but
Yeah.
my wife was really interested in food showing up on the table too.
So now you started Kopis, and so that's 99?
Yep, 99.
Okay, 99.
May 1st, 1999.
And
Ironically, opened up the office about probably 100 yards from that Price Waterhouse spot. We
Wow.
opened it in a little, we were subleasing a little office right in that Bergamo Plaza in one of the buildings. There was where we started the company.
Very nice.
But 99 was very different than 87 Greenville.
Yeah. Yes, it was better. Also, it was probably good for custom development people, I would think, with the Y2K coming. It's a good lot of Y2K
You know what?
business.
So the irony here is I thought I was one of the most brilliant business people ever.
Yeah.
Also a great salesperson, because when I started in May of 99, there were three of us, myself and two other folks who were developers. We quickly went to 15, really quickly. And then so that would have been in 2000, coming into 2000 and for a little bit into 2000. And then, oh my gosh, by the middle of 2001,
Yeah.
we were, oops.
That's all right.
Oh, it's actually my daughter, the soccer player.
Oh, my gosh. You should talk to her.
I tell you what, let me just tell her I'll call her back.
Yeah, tell her. She's got a professional soccer player daughter. Where's she living now?
She lives in Raleigh, plays for the North
Raleigh.
Carolina Courage right now.
Okay, very nice.
Remind me where, so
15 people.
we went from 3 people to 15 people.
Yeah.
And then by 2001, we were back down to about 4.
Okay.
And what I learned, a very valuable lesson, which is the confluence of Y2K and the emergence of the internet doesn't happen that's not normal.
You're like, I'm a genius.
Oh my God, it was so easy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
All I had to do is find a person
Yeah.
who pretended they knew about computers, and somebody would hire them,
Yeah.
right? And then, obviously, Y2K, we got through it. A couple months afterwards, we started scaling back on that, and then in the Nasdaq bubble burst, and then you had 9/11 happen, and
That's
01.
3 things
And
in about 1 year.
oh my gosh, yeah, it was a really intriguing first couple of years.
Yeah.
So it was up, down, and then we started building it on a much more
Yeah.
stair-step approach.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So you started the business. It was going great because of Y2K. People were hiring Andy's company to just fix things so when we flipped over to the year 2000, that all the systems didn't break, right?
Okay, that's what Y2K was.
That was what it was.
Yep.
We got a lot of business from it too.
Yep.
And then when that Y2K came and went and nothing really bad happened.
Because of all the great work we did.
Of course, you saved the world.
We did. We were part of it, at least.
That was good. That was good. All right. Well, that's
Which I'm sure is partially true, by the way.
Well, it is with your customers anyway.
There were definitely systems that would have broken
Yeah.
had the effort not been spent. I'm sure it was. We probably did things that were overkill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
It is a long time ago. No statute of limitations there.
No. Okay.
So you got through that, and before we keep going there, let's start talking about interviewing. It's very important to our audience, is the things you learned about hiring your first people and what people did well and not so well to either get or not get a job.
Yeah, so I would actually tell you that I'm not the greatest interviewer and never have been.
Okay.
Personally, I think I hired the first, oh my gosh, I probably hired the first 20-something people in our company. And actually, I probably did okay.
Yeah.
But I think I was terrible at asking questions, and I was really good at selling our business.
Right.
And so I look back on that and realized that I'm not a great interviewer. Mm-hmm. You want somebody to describe with passion why Kopis is a great place to work?
Yeah.
I'm your guy.
Right.
But so I brought in a larger team to help us on the interview process. And I'll tell you what I've learned from them more than what I personally am good at is, number one, making sure it's a cultural fit, which I think I was doing inherently.
Yeah.
So that is a two-way street. And we make sure when we're doing interviews, we make sure everybody knows this cultural, this analysis of is it a good cultural fit is something that we're doing with you, but you need to be doing it with us too, right?
Yeah.
So I would tell every interviewee that they should be looking at as part of the interview process. What's the culture of who I'm interviewing with? And do I believe it's going to actually help me become a better person and thrive?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be something that I'm going to struggle in? Because if you're going to struggle in it, you won't do it for long.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the other thing is we can tell when an interviewee comes in prepared, right? So preparation ahead of time, at least knowing the company you're talking to, certainly a lot easier now. Going to website, what do they do?
Yeah.
And having some of that information down, as well as going on LinkedIn and maybe knowing some of the key people. And
Yeah.
so already walking in, we're always impressed when somebody's done some research ahead of time.
Yes.
Doesn't just tell us about the interview, it tells us a little bit about their process and how they're going to approach things. And quite frankly, from a sales standpoint, probably very important from, when we're trying to break into a new customer, research is a huge part of that.
Right.
Do it when you're interviewing for the job is a big one to me. And then the other one is quite honest, honesty on the interview. We don't mind if the answer to a question is either a pause and I have to think about that, or give me some time, or I don't know.
Yeah.
That's actually better than stumbling through and making stuff up, because we can see right through that.
Yeah.
And so. Again, I don't care if it's our developers, project managers, or a salesperson. That honesty of and the willingness to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
My favorite interview question that I always ask when I'm brought in on interviews now is, describe to me the job you think you're interviewing for. And it is sometimes, well, it doesn't happen anymore. Our team knows I'm going to ask that question.
Okay.
Now. So they make darn sure
Right.
that there's no misunderstanding there.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised early on how often the description of the job by the interviewee and what we're actually interviewing for did not match.
Right.
And it's like, well, so I think it's part of the interviewee's job to make darn sure they have a good idea of what is the job that I'm interviewing for, and what's the definition of success in this job, and how comfortable are you that you can succeed in that? So to me, those are some of the really key things.
Those are great.
There's a lot of little tactical things you can do, but at a big level, those things, and I think we walk out of an interview impressed.
Yeah. I agree. I think those are all great, and they're all great to pass on to the Noob Schoolers. The one thing different about what you said is the honesty part. I think that most people go in there thinking they've got to have the perfect answer to every question. Yeah. And the perfect answer may be, the reason there's a gap here is because, I decided to goof off for 4 months. I went and stayed with my cousin in Tucumcari, and now I'm back.
Now I'm back.
And you'd be like, that was cool. What was Tucumcari like?
Yep.
That would be
You could probably tell me, what did you learn while you were there?
Right. Why did you come back?
Yep. Why did you come back?
Yeah.
Yep.
But if they could have said, well, it was just a repositioning, they could have you could tell they were BSing.
Yeah.
So be honest.
Be honest.
And if that answer doesn't work, then we're not a good fit.
Exactly. I think that answers the cultural question too. Helps answer that.
At my company, Tucumcari would be cool.
Yep.
I'd love to hear it. Probably you too.
So, definitely. But so the reality is, if the answer to every question is I don't know, or it's like, well, probably not a good fit as well, right? So, but it's perfectly fine.
Right.
We've now modified our interview process where before we even bring a group of people in, 2 people just go sit down and have coffee.
Just make sure.
And it's a 15 to 30 minute conversation over coffee, not an interview.
Yeah.
Just to make sure 2 ways.
Yeah.
Culturally.
Right.
Good?
Yeah.
Do we think is it even worth spending anybody else's time, including the interviewee's time, doing this?
That's good.
Yep.
That's good. That's good. Now, I assume being on time is important. It's one thing I hear pretty consistently is a disqualifier.
For an interview, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. Be early, as a matter of fact. I mean, don't be 30 minutes early.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's nothing wrong with walking in 5 minutes early.
Mm-hmm. What about, I've been to your office, it's pretty casual. What would you expect a salesperson to dress like when they came for an interview?
I would expect business casual, quite
Business
frankly.
casual.
I don't want them really walking in jeans. And in the end, you're probably going to, when you're working for us, there's going to be a lot of days you're wearing jeans. That's not probably the way to approach an interview.
Yeah.
And same way with going to a client for the first time.
Yeah.
I know I'm wearing them right now, but if I'm going to meet a client for the first time, I am not wearing jeans. I'm dressing up. And until I learn enough about them to know whether jeans is appropriate, I'm gonna end up wearing khakis and a button-down shirt.
And so if we were interviewing with you and we'd had, say, a pretty good interview so far, and all of a sudden you say, well, John, what questions do you have for me? Which is kind of my cue, right? That's my cue. Because really, I don't think you want to walk in there blasting out questions right off the bat. Nope. I think you want to wait, and it's my turn. How many questions do you think are appropriate for someone to ask?
I don't think there's a number. Depends on the quality of the questions.
Okay.
If I'm getting asked, or if we're getting asked questions that would have been easily answered by doing research on our website, we're going to be annoyed, and probably one is too many questions. But if they're good questions, if they're actually questions that are around you trying to figure out, are we a good fit? Mm-hmm. I don't think that we really feel like there's a number of them that's.
That's a good answer. That's as long as it makes sense, they can ask more. Yeah, but I think if they become annoying questions, that's, if they're not good questions, then it becomes annoying.
Yeah, and so people might ask, what's a good question? Once again, I think if the information's readily available and spending 30 minutes before the interview doing research on who we are and the company, what we do, if that's annoying.
Yeah.
Right.
I like a question like, if you hired me a year from now, what would success look like for that first year? Yep. That would be good. Or what are your
That's a great question.
What are your most
even success in the first 90 days?
90 days. What are your most successful salespeople? What are their most popular habits that they do every day?
Yep.
That kind of stuff.
Yep. Any of those types of questions.
Yeah, and I do feel like there's kind of 2 phases to it. One is certainly you don't want to not say anything. You don't want to be like, I don't have any questions.
Yeah.
So, but at the very least, you want to have a couple of good questions. But if the conversation flows and you have more and more, I think, you can kind of feel it for yourself.
I think so too. The other one that I will say for a salesperson interviewing, I kind of like to see them end the interview with a close if they think it's good.
Right.
So,
How'd I do?
even just how did I do? Or when are you going to make a decision?
A scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah, things like that are giving some indication of. So walking in, hey, I research. Exiting, hey, I'm going for the close, or at least the disqualification, right? I'm in or I'm out.
Yeah, I love that. I agree, and it doesn't happen much. I had a young salesperson one time I was interviewing. First interview, we finish up, and I said, I'll tell you what, like what you said, I'll give you a ring on Tuesday. And he pulls his phone out. He goes, you got your phone with you, don't you? I said, yeah. He goes, why don't we just check our calendars real quick and put something on the calendar?
Brilliant.
I'm like, I don't need to talk to you Tuesday. You're hired. Let's do it.
Exactly. That is a great. Yep.
He crushed me.
Exactly.
It was great.
That's awesome.
Good. That's good. Well, that's good on interviewing. Is there anything that sticks out to you that people did that just got them kicked, not thrown out of an interview, but immediately you knew you weren't going to hire them?
Wow. The answer is yes, and I can't think of what.
Okay.
I mean, I can tell you that I have sat in interviews, and in the first 5 minutes,
right,
I'm like, I know this is, and now that's almost God, I'd like to just end this for both of our sake right now,
right.
But that's almost rude.
Yeah.
I don't think it actually is, but it feels rude,
right.
And so, but I can't think of exactly what it was. It was either. In some cases, I can tell from a personality standpoint that there's not the cultural. That doesn't happen to us anymore. Once again, that screening process early on. Those people don't even walk in the door.
Right, you don't see them until they've gone through a few screens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, honestly, there's just 2 people on our team that do that initial screening. So we never see anybody who it's like, they don't get it.
Yeah.
Likewise on certain things like technology stack, like if we're hiring developers. Some testing to make sure that we've got somebody who is a good sales candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Those pre-screening things, I think, have filtered out a lot of the situations where, hey, it's really obvious that this is not a good fit.
Right.
So that's happened less and less.
Right.
And if I had, once again, I can't remember specifics. I think that's happened to me more with hiring technical talent. Where I realized right away not a good fit than it has been sales talent.
Okay. One more thing on the interviewing that we used to do, we used to have receptionists, and we coached the receptionist up to talk to all the interviewees as they waited, and she would tell us what she thought.
That's great.
And man, she would say, "You're gonna love Andy," or she would go, "Mm-mm." No.
There's your screening process.
Yeah,
you probably
that was the first screen, and it was unbelievable. She was uncanny how good she was because if they were a jerk to the receptionist, they were gonna work at our company.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep. I think once again that's kind of what our group is screening.
Yeah.
And figuring that out over a cup of coffee really quickly now.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about building the company. So, you went after the .com bust in 2001, I guess.
Yep.
But since then, it's been a nice steady run for Kopis over the years, and I know you've done a couple of acquisitions along the way. Can you kind of describe the process from then to now?
Yeah, what I'll tell you is probably the first 15 years we grew, but we grew as much as one person could make it grow. I did it very much just through brute force.
Yeah.
And I've told people I didn't know it at the time, but I've realized I held back our ability to grow by keeping control over everything.
Yeah.
And there's one of the downsides of being able to do coding, do project management, do sales, do the accounting.
Yeah.
I could do it all. I shouldn't do it all, but I could do it all.
Yeah.
And so, in the early days when there's 3 of us, I needed to do it all. But I let go of it took me too long to let go of the reins. So the reality is we grew, but and we did steady growth, and it was very stair-step growth. I was the primary salesperson. I had always had one other person helping me with the sales, but we very much had a mindset of sell to our capacity. If we had 10 developers, we were always trying to keep 10 developers busy instead of just go find as much business as we could, and then we'll find the developers to do it all. We didn't have that mindset. We very much had this is our inventory, sell that much.
Right.
hey, we've got them all busy for 3 months. Well, we can quit selling for a while. So, and we literally, that's pretty much how we approached the process. In 2014, we were at a size of number of people that it just got to be the reality is it got to be no fun for me. And I remember very distinctly walking into our Monday morning meeting, and the whole team was sitting around, and we could all sit in one room at the time. And I told them, I said, we are embarking on a different path, which is a path to eliminate any single points of failure in the business, and we're starting with me. So at that point, started down a path of letting go and letting go and letting go and bringing other people in to manage and control things. So that was a very pivotal moment in the company's business, and so our growth trajectory increased when I did that. But I still did it in dribbles of I didn't one day come in and let go of everything. And even to this day, coming into 2023, I'm kind of still letting go of some things. So there's still a few things that it's like, nope, gotta let go even more of some areas. But we started growing, started bringing in other people. And so to me, one of the interesting things about growth for us and what we've done over the last maybe 7 or 8 years wasn't really growing with a specific growth number target in place. But as we started adding other people in roles, that meant we started having overhead in places we'd never had overhead before. So because we needed people leading development and doing, right? So all these things, administrative functions and sales functions and non-revenue generating functions that I always did, as I put other people in place, there was more cost associated with the non-revenue generating, which means to cover that, we need more revenue. So our growth has kind of been targeted towards supporting that. We're an organization that doesn't have a single point of failure. How big do we need to be for that? So that's changed a little bit now for us, where we've shifted now to where we have the sales and marketing team, and that is one unit, one leader, and their goal is to just grow revenue. Right. And the operation side is to how do I support the revenue that's being generated. So we've got different people in place. So that's evolved into that. But early on, it was not. So we did 3 acquisitions as part of this growth. One of them was adding additional software development. So our custom development and digital development side was adding capacity there. And that was a very significant in terms of number of people, but it was not significant in terms of tech stack. That moved us into a different sector, though. So we had always done private sector only, and we acquired a group that did public sector. So that we almost had a 50-50 split on our development after that acquisition of public-private sector, which was healthy for us, actually. The other one was the second acquisition. Well, actually, the first acquisition got us into the Microsoft Dynamics ERP space. We had decided we didn't always want to come solve people's problems writing code. We could solve people's operational efficiency problems starting with a platform and building upon that platform. And it would feed development work, but we could start with the platform. So that was not a huge acquisition in terms of people, but it was a completely new product line and side of business. We just, in December of 2022, added on to that group and did an acquisition of additional people and customers on top of that ERP group. So that increased the size of that group by almost 30%. And so that was very much a strategic decision around just trying to, in a big chunk, grow revenue and grow capacity.
And so you're located in the next building on Church Street, right?
Church and University,
Church Street.
And
do you have a favorite word you'd like to share with us, Andy?
Probably a few of them, but if I had to pick one, I'm going to go with impact.
Impact. Okay, why that word?
So first of all, we have 4 core values. Impact is one of them.
Okay.
And whenever I describe these to people, I always say, listen, the one thing about impact, we with our core values, each of them, we wanted one word. We want positive impact. Yeah. You can have negative impact. That's not what we're trying to do. Yeah. To me, though, the word impact describes how we want to approach sales, but also how we want to approach what Kopis is and what it's part of its purpose. So we always want to have a positive impact in delivering a solution to somebody. You have to understand why they're doing it. Mm-hmm. So you have to start with why in that case. And if you don't understand that, the odds of hitting the bullseye and having a positive impact are not high. Right. There are a lot of our other core values that are around leadership and around working with people in a respectful manner and so forth. But in the end, that's all part of having a positive impact on them. So we can have a positive impact on our clients by the solution we can deliver. Yeah. We can have a positive impact on our clients just by our interaction with them and them saying working with those people is just a good experience or has been beneficial to me. Or they may not have solved our problem because they couldn't, but they helped us figure out where to go. But on top of that, impact to us represents we want to have a positive impact on all of the people in the company. We want them to grow while they're at Kopis and become the best them that they can be. And we want to have a positive impact on our community as well. So that one word, when we looked at our core values and our core values came from what makes me tick ultimately since I started the business and did so much of the early hiring, that if I had to look at all of them, that one I think encompasses success of the other ones being put in motion.
Okay, that's a great word. And is there anything you want to promote today?
Well, so, Kopis in terms of what Kopis does and who the right clients are for Kopis, I'm going to put it in two different buckets.
Okay.
So one is organizations who feel like they're growing, but their systems are holding them back.
Okay.
And what does it mean when your system's holding you back? It could be just obvious. Our system's too slow. Our system's, it's clunky. It's old. That might be really obvious that your system's holding you back. Other examples that, though, might be that this works great when one person does it who's been here for 20 years, but I can't hire somebody else and put them down and do it. So it's your system's holding you back because it doesn't incorporate the institutional knowledge of how to do things and systematize that institutional knowledge. Okay. Right? So organizations that are trying to grow and their systems are their ceiling, we can help.
Okay.
We can help sometimes by writing code. We can help sometimes by changing ERP solutions, sometimes by both, sometimes through visualization of data. Okay. But really so much about what we've built at Kopis and so much about what we do is about helping organizations who are growing, who are bumping their heads on something. It's that.
And that would be the one to reach Kopis, kopis.com?
KopisUSA.com.
KopisUSA.com,
yep.
Okay.
We tried to get Kopis.com, but Mr. Kopis would not sell it to us. He
man.
would. It just wasn't worth the price.
It was a lot, yeah. Well, Andy, you built a great company so far, right? You got a lot of runway ahead of you still.
So far, we're still working on it.
Yeah, but proud of you and appreciate you sharing the story and a lot of stuff to pass on to the Noob Schoolers. So thanks for being here today.
That was great. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, John.